Yo, how are we doing, guys? Today we're taking a look at Journey to the End of the Night by Céline. Now, okay, first off, Céline was a Nazi. Alright, that seems to be something very prevalent. For some reason, we love to connect the fucking art with the artist these days. No more than ever, I would say. It's ridiculous to me. I just want to put this out there first off and first all, that I don't give a shit. Sorry. It's not relevant. If the whole idea of art is to try and create something that is bigger than you, so if that is achieved, you are exempt from what you are like as a person. I don't give a fuck. There's plenty of people in the past who've committed atrocities and been complete arseholes, and no one ever mentions it. And Coco Chanel was a fucking Nazi, but it doesn't stop you buying Chanel No. 5 every year for your mother or your girlfriend or you whoever, does it? So, yeah, maybe you shut your fucking mouth. Judge the art, not the artist. Okay? Yeah? Alright, let's move on. Right. Journey to the End of the Night is a novel that was published in 1932, and it is a semi-autobiographical piece by Céline, and he uses the alter ego of Ferdinand Bartholomew to tell his story. It starts off in World War One. Some people think it's a World War novel, but I tend to disagree overall. I think it is in a kind of aftermath kind of effect, but not really anything else. But Bartholomew does sign up. I'll be interchanging Bartholomew and Céline because as it's his alter ego and it's widely known that it is really a kind of biography of his, then they are interchangeable. But he enlists early on in the novel to fight on the front line, and he ends up in Flanders fighting against the Germans. And quite quickly, he learns that he's a pussy and he should have fucking stolen something to get out of it or something like that. And he kind of basically starts coming up with ideas of how to get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible because he has no interest in shooting a bunch of people he's never met, doesn't know, and he doesn't have an issue with, whilst he's got superiors giving him shit all the time, and basically making his life completely miserable. The whole horrors of everything, he thinks the world's gone completely mental, that they're a bunch of dogs basically without any limitation to their madness, and they've been given weapons which he can't understand, and the whole thing to him is completely ludicrous. Which I think quickly gets you on his side, because despite his biting comments about people in general, it's hilarious. And you do empathise with it. I think really, if we're all honest, we would all pretty much shit our pants if we were on the front line. And he's very open about this, and he even says that cowardice is for the wise, really, that to get out of this situation it's better to just escape. You don't want to make any kind of qualms or, arguments against it. You just want to find your way out of there, and so you can get on with your life. Through an injury, he actually ends up back in Paris. He meets someone called Lola, starts an affair. There's kind of intermittent affairs throughout the whole thing. Pretty soon he goes to Africa after that, to colonial Africa, to help out there in a sense, but what he's exposed to is horrific. Then he ends up in America. He meets a prostitute that he falls for, that he leaves, and he works in the Ford industry, Ford car company. On the kind of assembly line, sees the repetitiveness and the horror of capitalism when he's there, and how the only reason there's an abundance of consumerism at that moment is because it takes the energy and the life force of its workers in order to create its progress. And then he goes back to France, in a suburb of Paris, to become a medical doctor. Completely satirizes the whole profession because he doesn't see he sees that you can make money out of it if you're willing to exploit people for everything they've got, which he's appalled by and doesn't do. He actually completely reverses that, and he actually helps poor people wherever he can. And although rich people, he does, see them in a medical way, they kind of dance around paying him and things like that. And he feels like a bit of a douche for taking money from them, and then he feels like a complete cunt for taking money from poor people. So he's basically, throughout his journey, the title being Journey to the End of the Night is a kind of play on the whole idea of every life or every man having to go on this kind of journey to discover themselves and their place in the world. And he's basically satirizing that by saying the only thing you're going to find out is that life and existence is fucking shit, basically. And throughout the piece you'll get some of the best black humour I've ever read in a book. It's so biting and hitting the truth of things that it's wonderful. There is a plot. I would say it's thin, but there's definitely a plot going on within it. There's a guy called Robinson who seems to randomly turn up throughout, sporadically throughout the novel, from even in different countries he seems to be there. So he meets him during World War One, whilst they're both on the front line trying to weasel their way out of the whole deal. And then he sees him again in America, and I think near enough every place that he ends up. And that plays quite a significant role. And his character, Robinson, which is a nod to Crusoe, Robinson Crusoe, he kind of parallels the experiences of Bartholomew/Céline. And they're both quite disillusioned, and although they form a kind of friendship, there isn't really any loyalty there, because Céline quite often fucks the women that he's with, and although they do help each other quite a lot, they're both so disillusioned by the war and the horrors they've seen that there's not really any hope there at all, and they're kind of drifting around. So the whole illusion about going out to try and find your place in the world is pretty much shattered by the reality of having to survive in such a greedy capitalist system. And really that's the magic of it. It gets accused of nihilism or labelled with it, but whilst Bartholomew clearly has a nihilistic outlook, a lot of the time I kind of see that as someone seeing through some traditional bullshit belief and kind of slamming it down to reality, and then all of a sudden you're a nihilist. It's like, well, no, maybe you're just seeing things for what they are, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, but I don't really see the negative connotation that comes with that. But there is a lot of cynicism, and it probably is the most misanthropic novel you will ever pick up. I think that's what makes it a fucking masterpiece, to be honest, because it doesn't just slam society and capitalism in general. It also takes love apart. It takes just human interaction apart, human existence apart, and the disappointments it comes with, and the kind of colloquial language that is used is slammed together. I was actually quite surprised when I first read it, because it reads like a very modern novel. Like the way some women come into it, and the only thing he's got to say about them is like she's got an fucking forgettable set of tits on her and stuff like that. And I just found that to be, well, one, almost shocking, because although I've read it loads of times nowadays, considering it was published in 1932, I was quite surprised by the use of language in it, and I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot of profanity as well. Not an excessive amount, but there's more than you'd expect from a novel from that time. The only thing I thought made it seem a bit older was the kind of use of insults or certain kind of throwaway kind of comments that they're a little bit dated. Can't think of any specifically, but there were a few where I thought, I haven't heard that word for a fucking long time. And but things like that. But apart from that, the translation in this one particular is fantastic, but it still reads like a very modern piece. And I think nowadays, with this kind of dystopian reality we're all fucking living in, this novel is probably more important than ever in a lot of ways. What Céline really criticises a lot is the kind of whole national or patriotism, but this kind of nationalistic outlook, and he's kind of thinking, well, that's all nonsense. So he kind of gets thrown around these different journeys throughout the whole thing. But each one of them leads to him seeing the world through a more cynical and negative outlook, but also with a lot of humour. So the humour really carries it along within it, and you accept his outlook because you almost question whether you find it funny or not. or whether it is intended as a joke. But I think that's exactly what Céline's intention was. So through, like the quote says, many a truth is spoken in jest. And I think that's what he's kind of doing. He's really playing with you as a reader. And his reliability is quite, it's almost concrete. It's kind of the softening concrete where it could still be, manipulated in some way. But it generally is told through a kind of reliable narrator. But due to his kind of hyperbole or his penchant for it anyway, you can kind of tell that he's exaggerating things at times just to kind of bring home the point. And that's what really makes it work. So my personal recommendation for it is when you just fucking had enough. When things are getting you down and life is just seeming to be shit. For me, I don't want some arsehole telling me to look on the bright side. I want someone agreeing with me. And this will make you feel really simpatico with Bartholomew and Céline's kind of adventure. I mean, it's not really an adventure per se, but it is a kind of just what happens when you fucking go out into the working world. And if you were, during World War One, that would have been probably an option that you might have opted for, but it really is just hopping around. And the other comment he's kind of saying is life doesn't really give you a choice. It kind of just throws you from one thing to the other without you really ever having any option in it whatsoever. So even though you have the delusion of kind of like, oh, I'm going to make something of myself and this is going to be a journey of self-realization, a lot of the time things happen that are completely unexpected. You end up in places that you never planned on going to, and generally existence sucks. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it today. I highly recommend it though. I know it's full of fucking nihilism and negativity, but that's exactly what I want in a fucking book. It doesn't surprise me that Bukowski loved the man at all, to be honest, but fuck his reputation. It doesn't matter. This book is it's a true gem, and you will feel like you've just got a buddy by your side whilst you're going through some shit, I would say. Yeah, the plot is thin, but there is a plot within it, so you will have a kind of an invested interest in what actually progresses throughout the piece. But it's much more of a kind of insight into what you probably already suspect, especially if you're within the range, well, any age actually I'd say, but once you've been through the kind of journey of life, you'll relate to this with abundance. But if you're just setting out into it and you're starting to sniff the bullshit, let Céline in, let him, set you straight. You're not wrong. There is a load of bullshit. So, and he'll crush you with his kind of biting satire and viewpoint of the whole thing. More relevant than it ever has been in my mind. Fuck this planet and fuck humanity is the general message, I would say. But it's written with so much passion and so much oomph that I refuse to just take the nihilistic outlook with it. Yeah, so what if he's fucking a nihilist? I'm a nihilist. So what? It's like, I don't understand this confusing negativity that's kind of, I suppose it is all down to the whole not believing in bullshit, but we're getting to that point now where I think a lot of us are kind of starting to see that, yeah, it is all bullshit though, isn't it? So if that makes us all nihilists, so fucking be it. But we're all, we're condemned to believe shit that isn't true anyway. And this is just another example of like exposing that, I suppose, and trying to accept it in a lot of ways and really facing who we are inside, and not in a good way at all. He sees things, I mean, with him becoming a doctor, he often compares like the insides of a person or their body tells you far more about their person than anything else, or the crap that comes out of their mouths. And it's just, I can't really say more about it, to be honest. It's a brilliant book, one of my favourites. So thank you very much for watching. The next time you're in a cynical mood or a nihilistic zone, then pick this up. You won't regret it, trust me. Cheers for watching. I'll see you soon.